Good morning, friends. Good morning. Tony Pellegrini here with Teaching and Learning at Southern Utah University. We're excited about this month's podcast. This month we have Bryan Koenig. He has been celebrated as one of our distinguished educators at our last graduation activities. And we also have Jayci Hacker. She's the Executive Director of Student Care and Advocacy here at SUU, as well as being awarded last year from the Thunderbird Awards, a Distinguished Service Award. We wanted to take a moment and give each of them an opportunity to tell us a little about their background, a little about their experience here at SUU, and then we're going to talk about classroom activities inside and outside the classroom. That's going to be our theme today as we address some great things that are happening in their classrooms. Bryan, would you be willing to take a moment or two and introduce yourself, a little bit about your background?
Sure, Tony. So I'm Bryan Koenig. I got a master's in general and experimental psychology from the College of William & Mary. My PhD is in social psychology from New Mexico State University. And I'm an assistant professor of psychology here at SUU, and I started in 2017.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Jayci.
Of course. My name is Jayci Hacker, and I'm an Assistant Dean of Students and Executive Director of Student Care and Advocacy. I work in the Vice President's office here in the Student Center, along with Heather Ogden and Jared Tippett. I have been in that position for a couple of years, and before that, I was in the honors program directing that for a long time. My educational background is I earned my master's degree here at Southern Utah University in public administration, and I earned my EdD last year from Arizona State University in education and leadership.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I love lifelong learners. That's why we're here kind of at the university. That's wonderful. Well, let's start if we could. I'd like to start kind of inside the classroom. You both have classroom experience. You work with learners inside of your classroom. What are some things that you do to get your students engaged and active in the learning process within your classroom? Bryan, would you be willing to start?
Sure. So whenever I teach a class, first time I teach it, I usually get feedback on my classes from my students about halfway through, and I always get feedback at the end. What to fix and what worked. And through that, I revise all my classes every semester, and they end up getting to a nice place. But one of the things I learned about is you go to all those teaching education. For us professors, go learn how to teach better in these classes. One of the things I've learned there is that oftentimes students don't some students don't do great at exams, and so it's probably good for some of our students to have the points to get your final grade spread out a little bit, and so it's not 100% of the class is your exam grade, because some students don't do well on exams. So I started to spread those points out a little bit. And then I kind of really got inspired by that because I started to have quizzes on the readings, and it seemed like all of a sudden students were doing more reading. And so I ended up thinking about these points differently. I thought about them as ways to pay students to do the things I want them to do. And so in my evolutionary psychology class, I give them points if they show me notes on the reading. There's an in-class assignment every class that I teach because I want them to show up to class and be thinking about whatever we're doing. And so in-class assignments, get them there and get them thinking about things. And so I basically end up having about half my points now on exams, and the other half is just on readings or watching video lectures for my stats class. All these different assignments. My classes, I'm teaching a literature review class now, where part of it is you have to do a presentation on your literature review topic. And so my students in that class always do a brief talk in front of their classmates, which is pretty hard. I suspect a lot of these students are introverts, and that's why they want to do the writing class. So perhaps for them, like me, I'm an introvert, so it's really hard to get up in front of people. And the only way I found that it kind of works is just doing it over and over again. So I try to have like the student-friendly version where they get up and they just have to like talk for 5 minutes about whatever their project is, and they get the points. But they do it every class, and so they get a lot of, as low pressure as I can make it exposure to doing that, and they get those points every time. And I learned about ungrading. I almost got to go to a talk on it that we had here at SU. I really wanted to, but I learned what ungrading was from it, and I found out that's something I'd kind of been doing with notes. You can't like score like the details of every student's notes every class or these talks. There's just too much. So it's either like if they show me the notes and it looks like they did all the notes, just like very vaguely, I just give them all the points. And so it's pretty easy to get those day-to-day points as long as you just do the stuff. And that's what I want them to do, is do the stuff, because I want them to come to class prepared by having like watched the videos or, done the readings. And then in class, I want them to be paying attention and engaged, so it's easy to get those points. And so that's one of the things. I've been calling them micro incentives, because there are lots of little ways of incentivizing students to do the stuff that helps them to learn. And then at the end of the semester, students say they like those things. They'll say things like, I know I got to do my homework, but it's hard to get myself to want to be motivated to do it. And little like in-class quizzes or in-class assignments or checking these notes helps me to get motivated to do the things I know that I need to do. So I'm kind of like trying to, I don't know, whatever I can do to get them in the learning process. That's kind of what I try to do. I don't know. That's one of the engagement.
Exciting. I think, as they come into my class, then those learners, you've established such wonderful habits with them to be able to take notes and engage and say, hey, I can do this. Maybe I don't have those micro incentives in my class, but at least they've started to develop those habits. And through activities like this podcast and others, I'm learning from other teachers as well what can be achieved in classes. Have your learners, just a short follow-up question, have your learners, they've given you good feedback on this, and I know, and you'd expressed, you've been tweaking your classes depending upon student feedback. Did you see some, after COVID or through COVID, did you see some interesting or diverse feedback or ways to address student needs?
I don't know. So I thought COVID was pretty bad for students. I thought like one of the hardest things with COVID was when we were on Zoom and stuff. I think students that were at home were having super trouble focusing. And I don't know. I still find that like you still have some students who are struggling or something in their lives. Jayci actually probably gets to know a lot of these students, and they're the students who like kind of stop coming and things like that. So I don't know if. I think that was way worse then, and it still happens now. But I don't know. I ended up thinking Zoom was hard for me. I just couldn't cognitively have two different audiences and keep track of it all and teach my class. And so I think a few learners benefited by having the opportunity to learn from home. But I think also some folks used that because it was easy and it didn't benefit them. Kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit. So I don't know. I think we're still kind of recovering in academia from COVID. And for me, I find that for pretty much all my classes, I think the students that show up and just get engaged and come prepared to do the best at learning the material and integrating it into their lives.
You've certainly given us some great approaches to have that happen. Jayci, your perspectives or observations or thoughts about in-class activities to engage your learners. What are some of the things that have been powerful and productive for you as you've engaged with your learners?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Tony. I love everything that Dr. Koenig mentioned. Those tiny assignments, the no-stakes assignments, I think are really, really important. It's been a while since I've been in the classroom, but my dissertation was all focused on online learning and how to engage students in an online space. And coincidentally, I started that research and picked that topic before COVID. And so that was just a really wonderful, not wonderful, but it was advantageous for me to have already put some frameworks into place. So when COVID hit, we were prepared to transition online with the honors program classes. And so that was pretty seamless for us, which was great. But my research really kind of focused on how to create those opportunities for students to engage with each other and to engage with the professor in the classroom. What we know about online learning and learning in general is that it's more successful when it's social and when there are interactions between students and with the faculty member or the instructor. And so I designed a lot of those kinds of opportunities for students to learn from each other, even in that online space. So assigning partners where they would meet through Zoom and discuss the class materials. They would still have group work that they would do through Zoom with each other. I would watch those videos later to make sure that they were all engaged and working with each other. And then I would have one-on-one consultations with them through Zoom on a regular basis throughout the semester. So I think that when we're talking about in-classroom or remote learning or that asynchronous learning, there are some very intentional things that we can do as instructors to change the environment enough that students can still have quality experiences. Now, they're not going to be the same experiences by far. They're going to be very different, but they can still learn. They can still have that satisfaction with the class, and that we can still meet the objectives of our programs and the curriculum. And so that was really fun research to do, and that really was the takeaway, is that as long as there was social interaction between the students, they did better, and they reported higher levels of satisfaction in the class, and they performed well on all the assignments. So, and that looks different, I think, in every space depending on whatever the class is. I think I want to circle back to this idea and this question, though, about how we engage those students who are struggling, because I think that's a really important part of this conversation, because for the vast majority of our students, showing up in class on time every day and doing the assignments is something that's within their wheelhouse. They can do that. They have the capacity. And we do have a small percentage of our students who really struggle with that due to disabilities or just really unique life circumstances that kind of come up unexpectedly. And so I think that that's where faculty and instructors can really be helpful in designing curriculum and course policies that are compassionate and flexible, and take those considerations into mind as they design those spaces for students.
Thank you so much. I'm fascinated with that, what you shared about the importance of that social nature of the engagement that needs to happen. And certainly you've bumped into those learners who maybe are socially challenged face-to-face. Do those same qualities or characteristics, do those exist in an online, or can students somehow tweak or adjust those to be able to succeed socially in an online setting? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's about diversity of options is kind of what we're looking at. So for those students who don't thrive for reasons outside of their control in a face-to-face classroom environment, those introverts, an online space is a lot more comfortable because they control the setting, they control the time, they can, check in on the days when they feel well, they can check in the ways that they're comfortable with. And so it does hand more control over to the learner, which takes a unique kind of relationship with the faculty member for sure.
Yeah, I'm again too. I love that word, control. I think of it too as choice. Providing choices to our learners, but to us as well, to all human beings. Choice is a great thing, to be able to make choice and make some decisions based on that. I think that's wonderful. We've got, this has been a great conversation about inside the class. Can I go back to you? I know we just were with you, Jayci, but could you talk to us a little about now, maybe from your perspective as the care and advocacy leader on our campus, what can we do as faculty, as learners, to provide wonderful experiences or opportunities outside of class? Would you be comfortable in addressing that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is a really, really important part of the conversation, because students come here because they want to earn their degrees. They want to be successful. And while learning is a huge part of that, it's also the connections they're making on campus that make their ability to succeed possible. So if a student comes here and thrives academically but not socially, we're going to lose that student. And so I think that those two things have to be part of the same conversation. And SUU does a really great job of providing a lot of opportunities for students to make those connections and to build friendship groups and to have leadership opportunities. We have an amazing team who work in our student involvement and leadership office who are just every single day they show up trying to find ways for students to make those connections. And it's so diverse. It's not just for our extroverted students who are used to that kind of a world, but it's also for our introverted students who are they really want to make friends. They don't know how to do it. COVID set a lot of our students back socially. And so we're accommodating that in the ways that those activities are being designed. And so for faculty, I think the important piece here is just to pay attention to what's going on campus. And I know that's hard because we have so many things to pay attention to. But we have a calendar on our website that shows the activities that are coming up. Toilet Times is a great place to pay attention to what's happening, mentioning those activities in class, having those conversations with students about how they're feeling socially. Are they making connections? Do they have friends? Has it been lonely being here at SUU? And opening that dialogue up, I think, is really important. Students don't know you're a safe person to talk to about those things unless you make it clear to them that you are.
And I'm grateful for what you shared there. I had that opportunity this last week as I was able to participate in the seminar on belonging that we had on campus. Powerful, powerful. Oh my goodness, I took away that same perspective. Tony, you've got to start listening. You got to listen a lot more to your learners, to everyone. Just keep listen. And as I had conversations with students, with faculty, with others, I shared, you need to go back and listen to some of these recordings of the seminars that were recorded. Powerful, powerful content of the wonderful things that are going on campus. That there's just, like you said, there's just so much going on. Thank you, Jayci. We sure appreciate that. Bryan, would you take a moment? You've thought about or considered some of the things that you try to engage your learners with outside of your classroom to keep them engaged and focused on their academic progress. Would you be willing to share?
Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe this is one of the examples that Jayci was talking about. So I'm like a research scientist, not a therapist as far as psychologists go. And so when I first got to SUU, I started a project because I was super busy, but some students wanted to get some research experience. And so we decided to do a speed dating study to try to see if we could manipulate men's sexual interest and see if they projected that onto women. Because we know in correlational research that happens, but we wanted to experimentally manipulate our men. The manipulation didn't work, but we did this project. We collected data basically until COVID hit. And it was a really cool project, but it got, a ton of students got to have research experience, running speed dating events, entering data, creating all the materials, analyzing the data, presenting it. We wrote a manuscript that's under review right now. And then there was a psychology department meeting where we talked about these results from ACHA, the American College Health Association's annual college health survey?
I think so,
Something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Assessment.
There won't be a quiz on this.
And,
No quiz.
And in it, it talked about how it had this data about suicidality across different Utah schools, Utah higher education schools. And SUU was relatively high on that list. Not super high or anything, but already the Western states are relatively high in the U.S. And then so we were a little bit high here, and so I was thinking that it's a pretty big issue for our students. And we were talking in the psych department about what we could do, and so we kind of put this, supportive statement in our syllabus. I'm like, it's got to be more than we can just do a syllabus statement, right? And which is good, don't get me wrong, but so I decided to switch over from doing social psychology research to suicidality research, and I've got a lot of student interest in that project. A lot of students that are interested in joining the research group. And one thing that so I should say that so I do this with Dr. Danny Hatch and Dr. Kirsten Graham. So I'm a research scientist, not a therapist, and so I didn't want to be getting into mental health topics without some experts in the room. And so I got so Danny's a clinical psychologist and Kirsten's a counseling psychologist. So they're both trained at that kind of stuff. But they also help like recruit students and mentor students. And so I know we meet every week, and it's an open door, open lab policy. So anybody who's interested can come sit in and they can try it out, see if they like it. And if they do, like keep showing up and start doing stuff. You'd have to get on our IRB application, of course, eventually. But it's been really a pretty rewarding process for us, and I think for the students. And so far we've collected a ton of data with what we call Wave 1, which is we tried to look at correlates or things that might predict suicidality amongst SU students. And now we're kind of moving on to like our Phase 2, looking more at like resiliency factors. And we actually have Jayci and some of the PsyD students helping us with this. And one of the things that a couple of the students are doing is trying to figure out how to have feedback. So SU students will complete the survey, and at the end, they'll find out if their anxiety levels are really high or not, or their depression levels are really high or not. And they'll get feedback that's going to hopefully be connected to actually Jayci's new the red folder. I don't know if that's the right term, but I think that's what you're calling it.
Our mental health resources website.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's be tiered like this. Would connect them based on like the tiering system that they have there. Well, yeah, and we've presented at quite a few conferences, and it seems like last year we had 6 students get into grad school, so it seems to be really a valuable experience for our students. And I don't know, I'm happy to have students do it for credit as an internship, because then maybe you count as class, not outside of class. But either way is fine. These students are so busy with their job. They might have jobs, then they're full-time students, and so if you need to get research experience and you don't have time, just take it for 3 credits as an internship. With me or whoever it is that your mentor might be, and that'll create some time to do that.
Exciting. Yeah. I'm glad that we have this opportunity to be able to share these opportunities with our learners, that our listeners that that can come to you for the support of these efforts. We've talked about inside of class, we've talked about outside of class. I'd like to just visit or kind of wrap up here with other components, other things that you'd like to talk about or that you'd like to share as Bryan has right here with our listeners, that our listeners, whether they're faculty, whether they're students, they might like to reach out to you or be involved with. Jayci, does anything come to your mind in your office that you'd like to share with us today that we've not addressed today?
Yeah, so it's an interesting time of the semester for me and the work that I do. We're past midterms, and we're at the point of the semester where students are recognizing that it's do or die. And I'm sorry for the terminology there, but it really is. It's kind of like they're thinking, is this salvageable for me? And if it's not salvageable, what do I do about that? Do I take the Fs and just deal with those consequences? Do I withdraw? Do I give up completely? And so as I think about that in the ways that I've had those conversations with students about how they've landed where they've landed, so there are some common themes. A lot of these students, their struggles have been obvious throughout the whole semester. So I think with that, the thing that I would like to encourage faculty to do more often, and I know they already are a lot, is just to do those real check-ins with students and very, very realistic expectations about where they're at and how they're going to recover, if that's even possible. From a compassionate perspective, right? We want to make sure our students know that we're standing beside them in their success. But I think that front line relationship that faculty have with students can't be underestimated about how powerful that is in getting students on the right track and getting them connected to the right resources. And that's why we're working so hard with the Big Red Folder and our mental health resources website to make sure that those tools go hand in hand to support faculty in those conversations. So I think that that's one thing I'd really like to emphasize, is just to step into that space. And then, of course, we always have different personalities, and people are comfortable with different conversations. And so for our instructors and faculty who aren't comfortable with those conversations, being aware of who is comfortable with that conversation and who can have that with students, I think is very important. So if a faculty member notices a student struggling, is worried about their safety, about their ability to succeed, they can always send that student over to our office for support. We're trying very hard to be very responsive active to our early alert system and to check in with those students. We've created a few new campaigns where we're being more proactive in that outreach, and we're trying to get those students connected to resources quicker. But, we're at the tail end of the semester right now, so it's kind of like, how do we compassionately help this student and set them up for success in the future if success isn't possible right now? And so those are fun conversations to have, and faculty support in those is critical.
It's great to know that we've got a great pitcher in the bullpen ready to come in and help us if there's something that I cannot do. We can have some help and support. We certainly appreciate that, Jayci. We appreciate you. Bryan, any other things issues or concepts or perspectives that you'd care to share as we wrap up here?
Maybe I'll talk about my approach to teaching statistics. It's kind of unusual. So it's a flipped class, which isn't all that unusual, but excuse me, I made video lectures for the statistics class, which are not like PowerPoints that are voiced over. Like, I went to the studio, the old studio that we used to have. There's a much better one now, and I'd like to redo this. But and so I recorded the videos like lecture style. I got some advice from people who had previously done flipped classroom or kind of this tele education, who had some related experience. And so I wanted to be present in the videos and have it be real time, normal time lectures, basically. Although if I make that a second time, I might do it much quicker, 5-minute videos, since some students are more into that. So I have this, the whole textbook, though, is all a series of videos with closed caption that's accurate. And so there's no textbook in my stats class, because in my experience, students make it through about 3 chapters of a stats textbook, and they struggle to continue to get engaged with that book, because it's really hard to read about statistics. I mean, I don't even love doing it, and I love statistics, right? And so I don't use a textbook anymore, and I use that video. So it's a open educational resource, so it's free, so students don't have to pay for their textbook, and they could access it later on in the future too. And then what I do is, before every class, they're supposed to watch it and come in with their notes already prepared. Then I come around in class at some point and then check those notes. But I find that almost always everybody in class has actually taken the notes, which I feel is much better preparation than you'd ever get if students are reading a stats textbook. So that's worked really well. And so then when after my reminders and stuff at the start of class about assignments, I try to do a really brief demonstration of whatever the topic is. The students have seen the recorded version, but then I try write up all of the kind of the notes up on the board before class starts, so that when class starts, I can hopefully do 10, 15 minutes of, this is how you do a t-test, right? And then right after that, I hand out the problem set, and then they do the t-test that I just showed them how to do. So hopefully they'll have watched the video, written the notes, and then watched the lecture, maybe even taken notes on that, and then they get to actually do the problems on it in class. And so after I hand that out, I'll go around checking notes, and I'll go around asking, everybody, how are you doing? Is there any murky parts on this? And so there's a lot of opportunity for students to ask questions if they want. And I don't know, I think it's been a pretty successful way of teaching stats. I still do regular exams. But for the flip structure, I think works really well for stats, since it's a class where technical things matter a lot, and I think it's really nice having where students can pause lectures and rewind the lecture, rewatch it later on if they want. So that's something I've been really passionate about. I'd love to do a second edition of that. I call it the statistics video textbook, and just got to get Gene Breen to give me a course release, and then I can do it.
We'll see what we can do to help and support you with that. Any last words of wisdom to new faculty coming on that to make them feel comfortable or to help them be successful? Or any last just words of wisdom to faculty to make things happen, Bryan?
I don't know. I'd say be willing to try new things and see what other people are doing and get advice, and be open-minded about things. Thank you.
Jayci?
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Be willing to get advice. I think that just remember they're not alone. That if there's a question, we will have an answer for it because somebody's asked it before, and that SUU has an outrageous number of resources available for our students. If there's a need, we probably have a resource for that. And so just asking the right questions and being open to that learning.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you, for being willing to come in and have this conversation. It's been wonderful to engage with you and to look in your faces and to be able to see and connect with you as great educators here at SUU. Listeners, we appreciate you tuning in and look forward to connecting with you throughout the rest of the year as we investigate teaching and learning here at Southern Utah University. Have a good day. Ciao,
Thanks,
ciao,
Tony.
guys.